Hello, my name is Megan Cromie. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I've started my own private practice, and I want to provide some videos for those of you who are also either starting a private practice or maybe even have been, in the business for a while. And for today, the topic I wanted to cover is if you were considering getting credentialed with insurance companies, how you could actually go about doing that. So personally, when I started my practice, I really tried to start in the most cost-effective way at a really small scale where it was really just me. And I think that's oftentimes the most common way to really start a practice. And when it's just you, trying to figure all these pieces out, oftentimes just the idea of taking insurance seems incredibly daunting. You're not trained anything about insurances, accepting it, billing, etc. in your programs. So you're probably not going into it with a ton of knowledge or education on the process. And it can just be, again, really daunting to figure out all of the different pieces of the process. So I just wanted to go through how to actually, if you are interested in accepting insurances, how you actually get that process started, because it is actually relatively painless and easy. It's not a hugely difficult process. There are, of course, some more difficult parts of working with insurances, but the actual credentialing process is not the most difficult and can definitely really be navigated by a sole proprietor, someone just starting out in private practice. So I wanted to go through what some of those options are. There's really going to be three main ways that people can get credentialed. The first one is going to be just going through a credentialing company. So there are lots of healthcare companies out there that just specialize in getting providers credentialed with multiple insurances. Oftentimes they may even pair services, so they're often companies that do insurance billing as well as credentialing all in one package, or they might be able to kind of do it a la carte and have that service done for you. Obviously, the biggest con there is that, you're paying the money. They're not going to do it for free. You are paying a service to get that done for you, but it can eliminate a lot of the headache of, just figuring out those pieces. And if you're really, not wanting to do it yourself and spend your time elsewhere, then it could be a great way to save time. So, you're saving a lot of time, but it is at an expense, which is you're paying them a one-time fee usually to get the credentialing process started for you. The second option is going to be if you want to join a larger practice. If you're just one provider, there's a lot of practices nowadays that's going to be like your Grow Therapy, your Headway, your Alma, your BetterHelp, etc. That are credentialing you and allowing you to take insurances. They often offer that service completely for free as long as you're going to see clients through them. So it can be a really low cost option. There's no money you're actually paying up front. However, there are huge cons associated with that, mainly just being that they are credentialing you under their practice, essentially, their tax ID. You are not getting independently credentialed. And I don't think they really make that incredibly clear in the process. So for example, I do use Grow and Headway. I got credentialed through them. I'm able to see clients accepting many different insurances through Grow and Headway. Now, if I did not go through the process of independently credentialing myself separate to those companies, say I was seeing a bunch of clients on Headway and I kind of decide, I want to do a different insurance biller. I don't like Headway. I want to go take my services, my clients somewhere else. You are not considered in network if you're no longer with them. The only tax ID you are in network with is their company, not your own. So you can't just take clients and be like, oh, I'm in network with Cigna and I'm seeing all Cigna clients at Headway, so let me just go tomorrow and take all my clients and I'll hire someone else to do my billing. They're going to have to re-credential you under your own tax ID. So just really keep that in mind. I'll go through it a little bit more as we discuss that option, but that is the biggest con, is that you are basically only credentialed so long as you're seeing the client through those companies. The minute you choose to not, see them through that company in particular, like you want to switch billing, or you want to do it yourself, or you want to hire an independent biller company, you are no longer a network. You'll have to re-credential yourself independently. The last one is to just credential yourself. Now, this one, the pros, it's free. It really doesn't cost any money. It just takes some time. It takes some time, and of course, it takes a little bit of headache. Nothing too crazy. I've done it myself. I didn't think the process was especially difficult. It just takes some time, but all of these options will take time. It typically takes months, usually anywhere from 3 to 6 months to get credentialed with an insurance company. So it's a lengthy process no matter who you go through. Obviously, if you're taking more time to do each step, it's going to, just keep adding to the time that process takes. But no matter how quickly you do it or which company you go through, it's still going to take usually several months. The big companies tend to be able to expedite that process a little bit, I think just because they're often credentialing so many providers at once. But either way, it's going to be a process. So the time involved is really more about your personal time investment in completing the forms, doing some of the paperwork, etc. It's not necessarily about the actual timeline it takes to get credentialed. That is fairly standard no matter which route you take. So I'll go with the first option and actually show you how you're going to do that. If you do decide, hey, I'd rather save the headache and just hire a biller, you're just going to really go in, Google credentialing services near me. They have nationwide ones as well. So you're really just going to go in, Google it. You can investigate various different companies to see the pricing options and which ones you want to go with. But the services they offer are all very similar. So they're obviously just getting you insurances. No particular one company has, like dibs. Like you can only get credentialed through Blue Cross if you go through this. They're all designed to credential you with all insurances. So you really just probably want to be comparing price point because everything else between the companies is probably going to be very, very similar. So that's the first option. Next, we'll kind of go through the next one, which is if you do want to go through one of those larger practices and have them credential you that way. So if you do want to go through one of those larger group practices, have them credential you, it is free, it is easy, and not too difficult to really get started. Which company you go with is entirely up to you. There's a lot of videos out there, probably already on YouTube. I'm happy to maybe eventually make one on all the differences between the different companies. Realistically, I think one of the biggest differences I've personally noticed is the rates. They all, to me, feel very similar in terms of customer service experience. They don't seem to offer phone support. Almost all of the companies that I've worked with, the Headway, the Grow, everything is really, you're going to be having to deal with like a text-based tech support and everything like that. But again, big perk, which is they are going to fully credential you. And one of the nice things they do offer, which is, pretty cool, is, if you plan on having multiple licenses or seeing clients in many different states, they do make multi-state credentialing pretty easy. And they're taking care of the whole process. The other big perk is that depending on which company you sign with, sometimes they're also throwing additional perks like a free EHR system. So if you don't already have an EHR you like, they're throwing one in for free as a part of their platform. So Grow and Headway in particular both offer free EHR systems. So that can be convenient if you're looking for one and not wanting to invest your own. But the main kind of con with this, again, they are going to credential you under their tax ID. So you are credentialed under Grow Therapy's tax ID. You are credentialed under Headway's tax ID. Now, still, they're filling out usually some of the CAQH for you. They're doing part of this process and making it a little easier. So, it's pretty headache-free. It's relatively stress-free. You're still going to have to upload all the same documents you would need to if you're going to credential yourself. So I personally don't think it's that much easier. But in terms of advertising, EHR, and credentialing all being in one quick bundle with people to walk you through each part of the step, you really can't beat some of these bigger companies. So personally, this is the way I started because I came into it not knowing any of this. I didn't have an EHR ready to go, and I wanted referrals from these companies, or at least to just have their assistance with advertising. So they pay for Psychology Today, ZocDoc, stuff like that, which to me when I was starting was really, really important. And again, pros and cons to each thing, because as long as they're paying for it, they're the one in charge of actually fielding client calls and messages through Psychology Today and ZocDocs and things like that. So I didn't like that and eventually decided to kind of turn that feature off. Still, it's offered, but that's just kind of one of the perks. So you can kind of see as I'm going through here, you can really just Google which company you would like to choose to join, talk with their representative. Usually they'll have you schedule an introduction consultation call for whichever company you decide to go with, during which you can discuss more in depth what that process will look like, which insurances they are generally in network with and will credential you with, what that timeline looks like. You can get as many details as you'd like. Most importantly, is probably you are going to be looking at the contracted rates. So unlike credentialing yourself directly with insurances, credentialing through these companies, you're agreeing to their set rates. Those are not the same as what they are getting from insurances. So there's a middleman, right? If Headway is billing and getting reimbursed $175 for a 53-minute plus session, you are getting their set rate that you agree with through Headway. That being said, in my own experience, the rates through these companies are entirely comparable to what I got when I independently credentialed myself. So I didn't mind the fact that they are getting a cut or skimming kind of off of that, because I couldn't negotiate for any higher of a rate myself. If anything, sometimes the difference was maybe $1 for some insurances, but a lot of times it would be evened out because some insurances, even when those companies are taking their cut, were still higher rates than what I was able to get when I just went to Cigna myself, when I went to Blue Cross Blue Shield myself. So personally, I don't think that's a huge con for me, but you may want to personally compare and see, hey, what am I able to get with my license in my area, with my specialty? What rate would I get independently compared to through these companies? And that might help you make a more informed choice. But they're not going to obviously be able to compare it. They're going to give you just what their set rates are for your state, for your license, for your specialty, and you take it or leave it. There is no negotiation with any of these big companies. So just something to kind of consider. And like I said, if you are thinking about wanting more flexibility and mobility for your practice, so if you want to be able to switch billers throughout your entire practice's career, you probably are going to want to get independently credentialed. You're not going to be okay with just going through them. Because if you switch billers, you don't want to probably have a huge gap, right? Where, oh, it's going to take months now to get in network with a new company or with myself, and now I can't see my clients as in network in the meantime. I would have to switch them all to cash pay or things like that, which is really inconvenient and obviously might result in you losing a lot of clients. So just something to keep in mind. You know, it's easy. It's a good option, especially if you're a completely new provider, completely new to the insurance game. They're going to take care of a lot of it. However, you're pretty limited in terms of having to stick with them, and you're pretty limited in terms of negotiation and the rates here. So the rates you're signing with, they are what they are. That being said, can be a perk depending on your state. So if you're like me, it might actually be a better deal to go with one of these companies. And to be honest, that's why I choose to actually continue to be credentialed and continue to see clients through, for example, things like Headway, because it is actually better than the rates I negotiated myself. And of course, they're doing the billing. So I'm actually getting reimbursed more for the same service and not having to do the extra admin work of billing. So really, it's saving me a lot of money. And I think that's why, so many providers do choose to sign up with them. So really kind of do your pros and cons there. That being said, you can do multiple options. So you can be credentialed through Grow and Headway and then still do it yourself, which is what I would probably recommend you do. So going on to the last one, which is just independently getting yourself credentialed on your own. We're going to walk through the steps of that. So the first step I would recommend if you want to credential independently is to fill out something called the CAQH. I'm going to, kind of walk you through what that actually looks like, how to find it, etc. But essentially what it is, it's a overall provider profile containing all of the standardized information you would need to provide to insurance companies. It's basically your application, right? So it's like a common application. You fill it out once, and then all of the insurance companies can have access to it, and that way you're not having to provide all the information every time for every single insurance company. So that's the primary purpose of it. You fill it out once. It is probably one of the biggest steps when it comes to getting credentialed because it just takes a good amount of time if you don't have all this stuff ready to go. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what that process actually looks like because it can be a little complicated to get started. But again, it is your profile. You keep it, if you've gone a different route, they probably have still done the CAQH for you. So if you're getting independently credentialed after already being in network with other either group practices, Grow, Headway, any of these other companies, you might already have a profile that they have filled out for you. If you're getting credentialed for the first time, first time ever accepting insurances, this is probably going to be your first time where you've had to really fill it out. So I'm going to start by actually just showing you how to find it and get started. Okay, so as you can see here, I went ahead and pulled up the CAQH website. You can find this just by Googling CAQH profile. You're going to go to the front page and click, no account, need to get started. It's going to take you to, just their landing page. It goes through kind of a reminder of everything you're going to need to actually set up your profile. So here I've got on the screen, and you can find it on their website, of like what kind of documents are going to be entailed. It is pretty hefty, so you're going to need pretty much everything relating to your practice and license. You're basically going to need your resume, you're going to need your malpractice insurance, you're going to need your license itself, your MPI, everything kind of involving your practice you're going to need to actually complete this and fill it out. So it's a lot of work at once, right? Like, especially if you don't have all of this kind of aggregated to one spot. However, again, you fill it out once, it's always going to stay there. And even if you move or, have to get credentialed with new insurances in the future, you're only going to have to do this profile, like the bulk of it, one time and just update it as needed. So we've really got all this stuff here, all the different steps to actually getting it started. Now, as part of like getting credentialed under your own tax ID, just as a reminder, you are going to be having to actually input your tax ID. If you are a sole proprietor and don't want to use your social security number, feel free to apply for an EIN, which is just a tax identification number for your business through the IRS. It is free, so please don't listen to any companies or Google search results that want to charge you for an EIN as you're completing this profile, if you want a tax ID that's not just your social. So just really watch out for that because it is free and easy to do. So once you've actually gotten your profile completed, it's going to take a while. It's going to show that it's accepted. You can then move on to the next step, which is actually going to the independent insurance companies you'd like to be in network with. Very easy to do. Honestly, whatever insurance it is, just kind of Google, join Cigna. It's going to take you to the provider page immediately. It's like always going to be the first Google search result. And you can scroll down and they are going to describe their process, right? So you can read through and actually take your time with the application. You're going to see here, because you completed the CAQH, you're not going to have to actually send them all this information. So if you don't have the profile, every time you apply to an insurance, they want all that information, but separate, attached in like 1,000 documents on an email. Super inconvenient. But if you've done the CAQH, you're a step ahead because it's going to be really fast. Now you can see from this, this is just the Cigna landing page for joining. The timeline is, like I described, it's pretty hefty. So no matter how well you fill out your profile, even if you have absolutely no errors, it's going to take several days, usually at a minimum 2 months. Obviously, it's more common for it to take anywhere from 4 to 6 months to fully hear back from them and actually become in network. They will try to reach out to you. If you are fully accepted, they receive your application, they process through it, they need providers, they let you in. They're going to let you know. If they are not accepting new providers, they're going to reject your application, they're going to let you know, and usually give you a timeline on when you can apply. But let's say, they're taking new people in, you get it, you kind of move on to the next steps. What that is you're going to move on to basically the contract stage. So they're going to go ahead and send you over the contract. That's where you're going to actually find your rates. Unfortunately, this is like one of the most annoying parts about independently credentialing with insurances is most of the time you do not know the rate until you've applied and gone through this whole process, talked to the person, and gotten your contract sent to you. They don't advertise the rates the same way Headway and Grow would, where it's one set rate, because it varies so much by location, different cities within the same state, different neighborhoods within the same state. It might even have different reimbursement rate. It depends on license type, depends on specialty, depends on so many factors. And quite honestly, they just don't like you knowing the information because it would probably increase the competition in the marketplace, and they don't want everyone talking about their rates, right? In fact, if you do sign, part of you agreeing to all of that is you're agreeing you're not going to share your rate with other providers, with anyone else. Convenient for them, not so great for us providers. But that's the next part of it, is you're going to get your contract. You can review the reimbursement rates. Please do that and make sure you're happy enough with it. There is room for negotiation sometimes. So it's possible. That being said, how much they're willing to negotiate with you might be very limited. So I can only share my own experience where I did try to negotiate back, because I have a really specific specialty. I practice exposure response prevention therapy, and a lot of the insurance networks have very few providers that offer that specialty. So I was in a pretty good position to negotiate, in my opinion, but when I actually tried to, not a single insurance company was willing to offer me a higher rate. So that was my experience. Maybe other people are pushing harder or have better luck. But in my experience, it was pretty much a we don't care. Take it or leave it. When I brought back up, but you literally only have 2 specialists in 100-mile square areas that can treat this condition. I'm getting people from your insurance company reaching out saying they can't find anyone. They don't care, right? They're like, no, well, here's the rate. Do you want it or not? We're not going to negotiate and go back and forth. You might be able to get it up by a few dollars. Really, I think it just depends probably on who you get on the phone to talk to. But in my own experience, not always super useful. That you can also, every time you have to go to renew your insurance contracts, you have that ability to negotiate. So what oftentimes people will do is kind of wait, and every year or so, try to negotiate for a slightly higher rate. And then, it's progressively getting a little better every year, although with the cost of inflation, it's not catching up with that. So if anything, actually, it's really the true value of it is going down with time, but you can at least take those opportunities to try to renegotiate for slightly higher rates. But that's kind of the next big steps. Because of that, because of the agreements in there, I can't show you my insurance contracts for, comparison. But you can, again, apply and just read through them. You don't have to sign them. You don't have to go on to those next steps if you find the rate and you're like, nope, this sucks. I cannot afford to do a session for $60. So I'm going to say no. And you can just let them know that, and they'll say okay, well, let us know if you change your mind, and you can reapply at any point. So check your rates, really think about how that fits into your business plan, because once you're in network, they're going to add your information to their directory. And that is where you're going to get a lot of people reaching out to you to start services. And depending on which insurance you choose to go with, sometimes it's a lot of people. There can be a lot of demand in that network. And if they're coming to you and they have insurance and you're accepting new clients, you are required to accept their insurance. You can't just kind of choose oh, well, I had 3 insurance clients, so even if you have this insurance, I'm going to make you pay cash because I have enough of this insurance clients and I can't afford to take more. If you agree to accept the insurance, so let's say, I agree to accept Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that's part of my contract. If I am now seeing cash pay clients and I'm like, hey, I can't afford to take more of these clients, and I just only start charging cash, but I find out one of these clients has Blue Cross Blue Shield, they're going to have an issue with the fact that they weren't offered to use their benefits because they contracted me at that rate, right? And I agreed that that was okay. And they don't like paying out of network benefits for providers if they know you're in network. So really review that insurance contract because it can create quite a lot of issues for you. And it can actually be quite a big process to de-panel from the network. So if you decide you don't want to be a network anymore, you have to do a whole new application for that. It often takes time, so you might have to continue serving that same insurance company or accepting referrals from that company for several months as you're getting de-paneled. So it's a little bit, it's not a quick one and done. It takes time to get credentialed. It gets time to get de-paneled. So think about it closely, because again, depending on the insurance network, you might get slammed. So if you're not happy accepting the rate they are offering you, you may not want to choose to be in network with that insurance, because if you get 50 people, from Blue Cross Blue Shield reaching out to you, and they all want to start services, that might end up being a huge chunk of your caseload, right? Now, again, you can, depending on how many insurances you're in network with, you can choose to also accept some cash pay clients, either who do not want to use their insurance benefits at all, so they're not doing this out-of-network benefit type thing. But again, you can't accept cash pay clients knowing they have the insurance you're in network with and not offer them the ability to use their benefits if they are going to submit out-of-network claims. The insurance is going to have a big issue with that, and they're going to be knocking at your door and probably having a lot of issues in auditing and things like that. So just keep that in mind. You really want to make sure the rate is sustainable for you, and unfortunately for a lot of people it's not. That's why a lot of people just don't accept insurance in our industry, which I know really sucks. It sucks on the client side, it sucks on our side to not be able to provide that level of accessibility of care, but there's a lot of pros and cons involved in making this choice. So I just really want to make sure that you feel, pretty informed about that process, because it's your business and your livelihood at the end of the day, and you've probably worked a very long time to get the level of licensure and experience that you have where you can go and see clients and really help people. So you don't want to make these choices lightly without understanding the ramification it will have on your actual business and on your income, of course. So just something to keep in mind, but all in all, the process is relatively easy to get started. What people will then have to figure out. So if you've completed the entire process of being in network with insurances, you'll then have to figure out, okay, now how do I want to go about billing insurance, which is a whole separate thing. So I will do a separate video on that potentially in the future. I just wanted to go over how to get credentialed, because honestly, that's already complicated enough, and plenty of information for people to have to figure out first. But the next step will be that you are going to have to do billing. And it's very similar to this, where there's multiple options. You can pay someone to do your billing. You could just have someone either paid per claim or getting a percentage, just finding local billing providers near you. There's so many. You can find recommendations and references on local, Facebook pages, or probably in your local therapist community, in your local, chapters of whatever societies you're a part of. You can find these, usually it's just one person, but also sometimes there are small companies that provide billing services for local providers and things like that. So you can just pay someone to do it and, have them take care of the insurance billing for the most part. You can go through one of these big companies. So if you're going through Grow or Headway, obviously one of the biggest perks they have is the fact that they are doing the actual billing for you. That, in my opinion, is much more worth the service and, making that choice than just the credentialing process. To me, the credentialing process is easy. It's the billing that constitutes a lot of your daily administrative work. So I prefer to go through these companies because they're giving me decent rates and they're taking the actual, headache of billing away. If you're going to do billing entirely on your own, I'm going to highly recommend you go through a clearinghouse and not be the one sitting there manually submitting claims on Availity or on, the Optum Express website. You're probably going to want to do a clearinghouse. If you already use something like Simple Practice as an EHR, you might just be able to upgrade your account to also be submitting claims and things like that. So lots of different options for billing. Like I said, it's enough information to probably go into a whole different, huge, long video on, but there are many options. And if you're just starting out, I probably recommend either just hiring someone to do your billing or going with one of these larger companies, because actually independently figuring out the billing on your own immediately to get started is a little tricky. Not impossible by any means. So if you want to figure it out, feel free. But it's a little bit much to figure it all out and get started. If you go through a clearinghouse like Simple Practice, it's a lot easier. So as long as you're doing that, I think you could probably manage it on your own. If you think you're going to be manually submitting these claims, only if you're seeing a few clients a week. If you're doing this full time, you probably do not want to be manually submitting those types of claims, but there's a lot of services out there that are not very expensive that provide these clearinghouse services for you to do your own billing. So if you are going to go that route, make it as easy as possible, because believe me, it's just not worth your actual time. You could be seeing clients during the time you're trying to spend making this process as cheap as possible. So if you try to cheap out on the billing, you actually end up usually paying so much more in your time, which could be spent with clients, and you're making more income. So just keep that in mind as you're exploring billing options and what route you want to go. And if you are just getting started and you want it to be easy, like I said, these bigger companies, at least for now, do offer a pretty competitive service in terms of offering the billing, the EHR, the credentialing, all under one umbrella, and can be a really easy process to just get started. You don't have to stick with them if you don't want, but if it's the difference between you not starting your practice and starting it, you may want to go through one of them just to begin your journey, and you can always make different choices and change along the way as you keep exploring discovering things and maybe learning more about the actual billing and business side. So best of luck with it. Hope you really figure out what's best for yourself, your business, and your practice, and just hope this information can help you make that choice and take the first steps of actually figuring out this credentialing process.